Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. It's Friday. You know what that means.
Front Office Friday!
Let's go. We get the real yell, not the hotel room Keith yell where he's got to be quiet. Now it feels like Friday. I like that. The world just feels right again after we got the official Front Office Friday yell. Keith, how are you doing, man? I know we're a little bit later, but that's because you went to go see the Marvels. Please tell me it was great.
I loved it. I'm not going to do any spoilers here, but I really did love it. It was just fun. It's short. It's only like an hour and a half long, so shorter than most Marvel movies. But just it was just fun. Like it was funny. It had some heart. It was very breezy, like in and out. It's not a spoiler, but I will say I've seen in gotten questions from people like, if I didn't watch Ms. Marvel, am I going to get it? Am I going to like it? Yeah, you'll be fine. It enhances it a little if you've seen Ms. Marvel, which you should watch. It was a fun watch, especially like being the parent of a teenage daughter. Like it was just a lot of that show hit home for us. But yeah, it was fun, man. All around, just a good, fun Marvel movie. And I feel like, just they did well with it. And we're back to got to stay in your seat during the credits because there's a pretty cool post-credit scene too.
I've heard there's something pretty juicy in the post credits, so I'm excited. I'm debating whether or not 7-year-old think they'll be good.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's typical Marvel, like superhero, like punching, hard violence and stuff. There's a little bit of language, but it's not crazy, and it's well placed, and it was just funny, man. It was one of the I think funnier Marvel movies that's not like Taika Waititi doing Thor stuff. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. And Loki was also really good.
I heard it was amazing. I got to get to episode 2 on that one.
Yeah,
but, I'm gonna
all around good stuff. Yeah.
Keith, this is this is both like a both praising you for everything you've been doing in terms of all the weight you've lost and all that, while taking a shot at my Lakers. So I figured you would enjoy this.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite comments we've ever got. Yeah, I'm working on it. This week was not a good week. I will say that. We were very. It was just one of those weeks where we're running around like crazy people every single day. So not a lot of good eating there. I don't know if you can hear the dog is whining.
I can.
In the background. Yeah, he wants to play with the other dog, and she's like, "No, it is nap time. Like, what are we doing here?" So yeah, he's getting very loud.
The dog's like, "You guys just got home and you're already going live? Come on, man!"
Right? Yeah, yeah. I appreciate it, Gary Gutierrez. Thank you, man. I hope you can see it as well. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And now they're going to play with this squeaky toy, and this show's off the rails already.
That's okay. It's Friday. It's Friday. We're off the rails, but that's okay. I guess let's talk a little basketball here.
Yeah.
When in terms of, because there's this obviously injuries and things going around, but when I look at this whole thing, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, the Clippers trading for Daniel Tice. Based on what we saw at the FIBA World Cup, I can't help but think, man, that would be perfect for the Clippers if they're able to get that deal done.
Agreed. Yeah, this one came in very late into
that was a loud squeak.
Yeah, they've got it now. They're fighting over a toy. So those little one succeeded with getting the other one to play, and now they're battling over a toy. So
that's going to be Russell Westbrook and James Harden battling over the basketball.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Well, welcome to Front Office Dog Show talk. Yeah, Daniel Tice. I mean, he'd be a perfect fit for them. Mason Plumlee, we know at this point, probably months rather than weeks that he's going to be out with the injury he has. Just it's expecting that, and Tice is just a good, solid player. Did you happen to notice last night the Pacers snuck him in for like 8 minutes?
Oh, did they
in the game? Didn't. So yeah, he didn't do too much. He was fine. He just kind of played defense and ran up and down the floor, set some screens. But it was kind of funny. It's like, oh, now all of a sudden he's getting minutes. That's kind of funny. But yeah, it was all around. I think Daniel Tice, he's like you said, he showed in the World Cup. He can still play. It's just Indiana has a lot of other centers that they're trying to play instead, which makes sense for them where they are with their team building. So yeah, if he lands with another team, it lands with the Clippers, that'd be a great addition. And it's a pretty acquirable contract, $9 million or so. So the Clippers still have the ability to put something together to go get a guy like that if they want to. So let's kind of keep. Yeah, I think that's one. Just let's keep an eye on it here over the next couple months.
Yeah, it's something that again I think would make a lot of sense depending on Mason Plumlee, and obviously if he's out a few months, I think he would help them out a lot. He can be a really nice fit for them. What do you think about this story about John Wall? You know, but pursuing an NBA like I don't fault him for pursuing it, but
sure,
I'm not expecting it either. Are you? Like it kind of feels like the ship has sailed here.
Yeah, he didn't look great when he played last year. Like it just looked kind of what made him so special was that top end speed when he had the ball in his hands. Like it was, we talked about Tyrese Maxey with that a little bit yesterday. Darren Fox, he was just like those guys. Like he could fly, but yeah, didn't play well. 40% from the field, 30% from three. It just looked kind of slow defensively. And now I believe let me make sure I have this right. Yeah, he's 33 years old. So I mean, by all means, if he can make it back, we'll be rooting for him to play well and do well if he gets back to the league. I just don't think it's going to happen at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I never root against these guys because I want to see them get to, continue to live their dream and all of that. But I wouldn't say it's likely at this point. Wouldn't say it's likely.
Yeah.
Michael said, any depth piece thoughts for the Celtics given the bigs guard depth? What do you think there?
Yeah, I mean, I think they would love it if Tice got bought out instead of traded because we know Brad Stevens has an affinity for Daniel Tice, so he'd be, I'm sure, welcomed back with open arms there. I think a lot of this is more the guys they have need to play better. Like Peyton Pritchard needs to make shots. He's getting really a lot of criticism right now from Celtics fans, which is fair on the scoring and shooting front. It's not so fair on the everything else. He's playing defense. He's rebounding well. He's making plays. So he's doing stuff there with that. But yeah, I think it's just get those guys playing a little bit better because it's not they don't have a lot of trade pieces left to go out and make a trade with. They kind of cashed most of those in, and it's really kind of what you see is what you get. And they're also going to be extremely limited via buyout because anybody who makes more than the non-taxpayer mid-level amount, which is about 12 million, they can't sign them. Any team that's over the tax can't sign a guy like that. So, or over the first apron, and they're clearly well over the second apron, so they wouldn't be able to sign them. So that's difficult. I say Mike Wolf says they let Wenyan Gabriel go, and he was good. He just wasn't good for them. He did not look good during the brief time he spent with them. So I think it's there and they moved on for reasons.
Aaron says, why are we not talking about Daniel Tice to the Lakers? The Lakers can't trade any of their contracts right now.
Yeah.
That's a big piece to it. When you look at the guys that, in theory, they've got a lot of contracts that could stack up in trade discussions, but those guys all aren't trade eligible. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Keith, because I'd like to get clarification on this. Jared Vanderbilt, because of when he did his extension and the size of the extension, will not be trade eligible this season, correct?
Correct. Yep, correct. Yeah, Jared Vanderbilt will be with the Lakers for the duration of this season. And then, yeah, you're right. With anybody who was signed like over the summer during like the bulk of free agency, so the July period, that's a December 15th trade date. Anybody who was signed much later, it's the minimum of time that has to pass before they could go. So yeah, it's trade season. Really, even for Daniel Tice to the Clippers, that's probably just more of it. They're monitoring it, and he is trade eligible, so maybe something could happen now. That was obviously triggered by the Plumlee injury, but we're probably not going to see another trade or any kind of major trade until after we're past December 15th, because that's when about 85-90% of the league becomes trade eligible. Then we hit into January 15th when roughly the last 10% or so, and there's always a handful of guys who are not trade eligible during a period of time.
Well, and I can tell you this, there's a lot of we look at that December 15th date, right? And we talk about it a lot. And sometimes fans will get really excited about December 15th as though they're expecting this explosion of trades to take
Yeah.
place on December, like the floodgates open and all these trades occur. And sometimes you'll see like one or two, but most of the deals, most teams aren't really willing, for a couple of reasons, aren't really willing to make a move that early, in part because they're still trying to figure out exactly what it is that they have and what they don't have.
Yep.
That's a lot of teams will be in that situation. And then also you don't have that built-in urgency of the trade deadline. Usually you have to have that built-in, that hard stop. You can't go past this date to force teams to get more realistic. We heard this a lot last year that there were a lot of teams that were their asking prices were sky high for everything in December. Why? Because they've got 2 more months to
Mm-hmm.
negotiate it and figure things out. So you typically don't see a lot of action like right on December 15th or anything. Usually, when the trades start trickling in, maybe mid January, but most of it's going to get done in that week before the trade deadline, which is going to be on February 8th.
Yeah, if I have this correct, I think our earliest one last year was what was it, like January 8th or so, when the Rui Hachimura deal got done a year ago. So that was, that was our earliest trade. So
Mhm.
it's pretty rare to get a trade in December, but we usually get one trade or
Yeah.
so gets done in that December to January window. And then when we kind of go from there is when we end up in a spot where then it really picks up after January, because then you've got about a month till
Mhm.
the trade deadline. That's what things pick up. Like, for example, last year, right in December, the Westbrook trade wouldn't have happened because the Jazz weren't ready to move on from Mike Conley yet.
Yeah.
That was a key part of that trade, was moving him to Minnesota and go from there. So yeah, it's just a little bit of a, it's a dead, not even a deadline. It's a key date on paper, but it really doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. It's just now those guys are eligible
Right.
with that. I'm gonna shout out too. It's not ready quite yet, but we tweaked and built an all new and updated. We'll be ready to go by the time trade season opens. Trade machine over on Spot Track.
Oh,
All the
that's
broken
exciting.
trade machines and everything that just they don't work right, and there's always something wrong. And in
Mhm.
that, we went ahead and rebuilt one with all the new logic, all the new trade rules, and all that. So hopefully that'll become everybody's kind of go-to trade machine. Where we're super excited to roll that out. It's in testing phase right now. So or as I'll more honestly put it, I am trying to break it. So that we fix it before we roll it out.
So Keith Smash.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I've been making fake trades for a while now and trying to get some, and so far so good. It's working the way it should. So it's not for example, it's not letting me trade Stephen Curry for Peyton Pritchard just yet. I might have him build that logic in on the side, and then
Just for
also
you.
somehow sneak it into the league's official code as well, and then we'll go from there. But we'll see.
So that will actually be really useful because I can tell you, and I know fans, everybody watching, you probably feel the same. With the new trade rules coming in, I'm going to be second guessing myself quite a bit this
Uh-huh.
year, especially because I feel like we had the old trade rules in for so long that most of the time somebody could just say player X for player Y or whatever. And I could say that works or that doesn't work, or these three
Yep.
players. And in my head, I could just do the math enough, and I have a general idea of what everybody's contract looks like. And I could say, oh, clearly that doesn't work or it does. Or if it's close, I look at the numbers, but I have a pretty good sense of what works and what doesn't. Now that the trade rules have changed, and the different teams are in these different categories and everything. And I know we had different categories, but it's different. It's going to take a little bit of an adjustment. So
Mhm.
I will be using that trade machine quite a bit, trying to make sure the math on everything works and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the idea, right? And it's no knock on other trade machines that are out there, but people send me stuff pretty regularly,
Mhm.
usually through
That
social
doesn't
media,
work.
occasionally an email, and it's like, "Hey, this was allowed, but this seems like it shouldn't work." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right, it shouldn't work, or something that should work is not working for some reason." So yeah, so I'm trying to really put it into a place where where we're trying to roll out a tool that really does work for everybody. And then if anybody really wants to get really crazy, we have our whole manage tool out there, which
Mm-hmm.
is where you can run all the way through a full off season for any team in the league with signings, renouncing players, trading players, whatever it is you want to do with that. You have that ability still there, and that's also being reworked and tweaked. Our programmer extraordinaire is working very, very hard to make our tools that much better and accessible for everybody.
I'm gonna be doing so many off-season run-throughs. Come like, June, July, we're gonna be putting numbers together, all that. Well, I guess we can even start doing that in May. But
Sure.
all right, let's get into some of these other questions and comments here. This one said, Pacers might be for real. They could definitely make the top 6 in the East. Halliburton is getting better and better. Where do we stand? We talked about the Pacers a little bit as one of the surprises of the season so far, last year or last show yesterday. But is this real? Is this? I mean, they beat the Bucks last night,
Mm-hmm.
6-3. They've got wins over. I mean, the Jazz, the Spurs. Okay, but they've got a win over the Cavs, 2 wins over the Cavs, really. So is this real? Are 6-3? Like, is this team a real? I don't want to say contender, but are they a solid playoff team in the East, or is this small sample size and they're going to level off?
It feels pretty real to me. I think there's 2 parts to this. Small sample size for this year, but this team was pretty good last year before Halliburton got hurt. And then by the time he's ready to come back, they dropped off enough that they were just like, all right, it doesn't really make sense. Let's reposition, right? Well, we're going to reprioritize for ping pong balls. And now they're kind of right back to where they were, except they're right back to where they were, I think, with a much better balanced roster. Having Obi Toppin and Bruce Brown gives them a little bit more size and rebounding and Toppin, and then it gives them a much better defender. And Brown is a pretty good secondary playmaker to have on the floor. What's been super exciting to me, 2 things that I've noticed really in their last 2 full games that I watched, one of which was against the Bucks last night. Benedict Mathurin he's starting to do more than just score. He's been getting on the boards. He had 4 assists a couple games ago. That's pretty impressive to me because the scoring's always going to be there for him. I have no doubt about that. But we don't want him necessarily to be, and I don't mean to be negative in saying this, but I don't want him to be just like another Kelly Oubre that just scores. Like he has a better skill set to be a better all-around player. So hopefully that's ultimately what he turns into. And then with Tyrese Halliburton, this really stood out in the Bucks game. This used to be my favorite thing about Chris Paul back when Chris Paul used to play up tempo. He doesn't really do that anymore, but the game was always played at whatever tempo Chris Paul wanted it played at. If he wanted to play fast, the game was played fast. If he wanted it to play slow and walk it up, Chris Paul played it slow. Yeah. Now Tyrese Halliburton's kind of taken up that mantle. They play fast a lot in Indiana, but against the Bucks last night, he was able to, all right, it's getting tight now. We're going to slow it down. We're going to find a good shot. We're going to really, work it here. We're going to bleed the clock a little bit. That was super impressive to me with him. So yeah, that's. I think that the Pacers are absolutely for real, and I will not be surprised if they finish top 6 in the East.
Yeah, I agree. I think they are indeed for real. I don't know if they will remain the number 1 offense in the NBA through the whole season. In fact, if you ask me to put money on it, I'm taking the field just because of the math involved. But I think they can be a good offense for the entirety of the season and wind up being in that playoff mix. This one, Tamal Paul said, should the Lakers relook at their medical staff? This comes up, Keith, and this is not just a Lakers thing. This comes up whenever a team experiences a lot of injuries. People start asking questions about the medical staff as though it's a medical staff issue. They're not doing their job, and that's why the players aren't healthy. He says health issues are dogging us every year. Can't just be coincidence. This year, Braun and AD are healthy. Well, AD is not right now, but still we are underperforming because of health issues. Yeah, I mean the Lakers have been slammed by injuries again. They've had an 8-man rotation for 4 games now. Yeah, straight 4 games. They've had 8 players to play. They got down to 6 players at one point in the Miami game. So that's definitely been rough. But all this stuff is behind the scenes. That's part of it too. But I have a hard time looking at it and saying injuries are because the medical staff isn't doing something. At least with any certainty, being able to say that, being that the medical part is not my background or anything. So it's always a difficult thing for me to address. So I'm curious to see, because I get this question a lot. Curious to see what you think, Keith.
Yeah, I think there's two components to this. One, like you said, AD not healthy right now. So AD is the challenge with him is he's a player who has known health issues. So I'm
Yeah,
not certainly not going to put that on the Lakers medical staff. He was hurt in New Orleans a lot. Like he's just a guy who picks up, as they would say in soccer, it
a
picks up a
knocks.
knock every
Yep.
now and then, right? And then he's out for a few games. It's just going to kind of be how it goes, and then feels like at least every other year he picks up a semi-serious injury that costs him about a month's worth of time. It's just kind of how it is. LeBron at this point at his age, I mean, it's almost remarkably doesn't miss more time, right? I mean, we're in completely uncharted territory with him playing
Yeah.
the high level usage role that he plays at his age. So that's just a different thing. Now, I would say Vanderbilt and Vincent, those ones, yeah, that kind of came out of nowhere. But I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm not. I don't want to. It's hard to pin it on the medical staff if it's something like player rolled his ankle or a
Yeah.
player fell into a guy's knee or something like that. It where I will more a little bit be like, all right, what are we doing kind of here? If all of a sudden everybody on the roster is coming down with a strained calf or a
Sure.
hamstring strain or something like that, are we not taking care of ourselves the right way? Are we not doing the recovery programs the right way? Where are we at? Like those things I do, kind of raise an eyebrow on, but I'm not going to pin this on the Lakers medical staff. I think it's just a run of injured players picking up injury or injury prone players picking up
Hmm.
injuries and just bad luck. I mean, I know
Yeah.
people don't like to hear that, but sometimes that happens, right? Every once in a while, you have those years where a guy who never got hurt all of a sudden is hurt and they're out. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's and that again, that can just be unfortunate timing or something like that that causes that. So again, it's hard to pinpoint something on the medical staff. Now, again, if you had the rash of the same injury or something, I think you're right. That's where you can start looking at it. Otherwise,
mhm.
I don't know that we know enough about exactly what the medical staff is
Yeah.
doing to have that. I think there's a really good idea here, Keith. Craig says the NBA should have two trade deadlines, one on Black Friday for 48 hours and one regular one in February. How about let's even go 24 hours on Black Friday? Just the window opens for one day and you can make these trades for these contracts that you signed over the summer and everything. And then otherwise you've got the regular trade deadline in February. And I'm talking about just for those summer contracts. You have one day, they call it a buyer's regret day, and you can suddenly move all of these deals, and that would open. So not only could we be sitting there constantly refreshing Amazon and Walmart and all those other things looking for Black Friday deals, we could also be just slammed by NBA trades. I think that would be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, my first thought is Craig is trying to make sure we definitely end up divorced because that's a good way to spend a holiday weekend is even more locked in to the phone. But yeah, it's funny, right? I mean, we've got this in-season tournament now. I just use knock, like let's continue the soccerification of the NBA. But it is funny. There are a handful of executives who have pitched the idea of almost like transfer windows. And if people don't know how it works in
Mhm.
kind of worldwide soccer is you have a transfer period, basically kind of towards the end of the summer as the seasons are getting ready to start, where these teams they can sign and it's not really trade, but like sell and loan and buy and sign players.
Yeah,
And then
their trade
that ends
system is different.
in your very different because you're a lot of times it's just who
Y-
wants to pay the most for this
Yep.
guy and then they go but then that stops and effectively there are free agents who get completely released and then can sign with teams, but effectively movement stops for months and then it
Mhm.
opens back up. I believe in January is the next transfer window will open. Then they've got about another month where teams can do these kind of moves. What's interesting is there's been a proposal in the NBA. I know at least a couple of executives proposed that that's what they have is they have like a trade window where these are the only windows in which you can make trades. So far, the NBA has kind of said No, nobody. It hasn't garnered enough support,
Yeah.
but it is. I mean, I know Craig was saying this probably somewhat tongue in cheek,
Yeah.
but it is something that is kind of floated out there where there's
Mhm.
been this idea of like, should we have like trade windows in the NBA? It'd probably be closer to like a 2 or 3 week window
Yeah.
versus two big ones. But yeah, that is a little bit of fun.
Yeah. It could be exciting. Could be an exciting little change. Fernando said, Keith, if you used the mid-level exception this year on a 3-year contract, like say Gabe Vincent, does that lock the mid-level exception for 3 years? How does that work?
No, yeah. So the mid-level exception you get every year. That's a replaceable exception. So even though the Lakers signed Gabe Vincent, if they are under the tax apron next year, they'll have access to the full non-taxpayer MLE the year after. If they're over the tax apron, and the Lakers are kind of dancing right in that range, pending what happens with a lot of guys on player options and whatnot, you land in a spot where you could have the taxpayer MLE,
Mhm.
which is a little over 5 million with that one. So that'll be where they'll be living. The one that comes and goes is the biannual exception. If you use that, which the Lakers did use that one as well
Yep.
on Torian Prince this year, they will not have the biannual exception available to them next year. Now, why would the Lakers use it this year on Torian Prince? Well, one, get a chance to get a good, helpful player for a relatively value contract.
Yeah.
But the other piece of it is what it is probably a read of the Lakers saying we're probably going to be over the tax apron next year, and if you're over the tax apron, you don't have access to the biannual exception anyway. It goes away. So a lot of times when teams know we're probably going to be really expensive the following year, they'll try to cram that in and use it this year. Now that did hard cap the Lakers at the first apron, so they are up in there. I've got them. Let's see. I can tell you at this point, I've got them about almost 5 million under the tax apron, so that
Mhm.
should be enough wiggle room to do anything they need to do as far as trade wise go. But yeah, but that's a longer answer than probably what Fernando was looking for. But they will still have
Yes.
the MLE.
The mid-level exception renews each year,
Yep.
refreshes. You use it 1 year, you still get as long as you have are in the correct situation financially,
Mhm.
you can use it again. You could use it year after year after year after year after year if you continue to have the ability to do so with the other restrictions not stopping you from doing it. Just because you used it the year prior doesn't mean that you can't, or if you have a player under contract on it doesn't mean then it's used. You could get to use it again the next year. You could have a team full of guys that are all on mid-level exceptions if you really wanted to, if you
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
choose.
Yep.
All right, let's get into this. Oh, Mike threw out, hopefully the Suns have to use their regular courts tonight like the Mavs will. So, because the Suns court is ugly. I was actually glad that the Suns court is purple and not orange. If you've seen it's sorry, I should
Yeah,
preface this.
I
It's
saw
a
it. Yep.
tournament. It's a tournament game tonight. And so the in-season tournament, we've seen those courts, but the Suns court is mostly purple. And I was worried it was going to be orange because that would be super bright. But nonetheless, I agree. I think the in-season tournament courts have been generally ugly. What's going on with the Mavs, from what the NBA has said, is there is a technical problem with their in-season tournament court. So they're using instead, I believe it's their City Edition court that they're going to be using instead, which is not nearly as loud as the tournament court is, but it's still going to count as a tournament game for them, even though the Mavs aren't playing on that loud court. So maybe a better viewing experience for Mavs fans for their tournament game tonight. But Lakers, everybody else that's playing in tournament games tonight, you'll get the louder court that I've seen some support, but I'd say it's probably 80-20 with people not liking them compared to liking them.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I saw was complaints on the Bulls court because
Yeah.
it was those two tones of red, been red with a lot of black accents in it,
Mhm.
and they were playing. Maybe it was the Nets wearing black jerseys, and the complaint was people who were colorblind were like, "I can't watch, like I
Mhm.
can't tell what's happening out there, like it's a mess for me to try to watch." So that's something I think the NBA needs to factor in a little bit better next time. Like, remember, the NFL launched when they launched Thursday Night Football, the Color Rush uniforms for
Oh yeah.
both teams, and a lot of the viewers there complained too. They're like, "Hey, it's cool that you have a team wearing navy blue against green, but for those of us who are colorblind, I can't. It's too dark uniforms, and I can't." tell the difference, so I can't watch this game. So
Yeah.
they quickly went away from that. Before that season even ended, I believe they started saying, all right, the home team will wear color rush, the other team will wear their light colored uniforms. So yeah, we'll see. It was like fun last night. Again, if you don't have any issues with telling the colors, like the Magic and the Hawks played in Mexico City, and they both wore their colored uniforms. The Magic wore the blue ones, and the Hawks wore their red ones, and they played out there with those. So it's okay. I'm a traditionalist. I prefer the home uniform at home, the away uniform away. Nothing drove me crazier than for
Yeah.
I want to say it was either 2 or 3 years in a row. The Celtics played at the Bulls on St. Patrick's Day, and the Bulls wore these green uniforms, and it's like you're playing the Celtics. Like why are you wearing green? So, but that's
Right.
a whole other thing.
That's yes. And we've gotten into the whole home and away jerseys, and can't we just go back to the good old days and all that kind of stuff? Goat said, could relegation work in the NBA, or would it be too difficult? No, it can't work in the NBA. It's too much.
Yeah, too much money.
Yeah, it's too much money at risk. If you're an NBA owner and your team is now worth billions, right? And there's a chance suddenly you're not in the NBA anymore, you're not going to be happy with that. You're not going to be happy with that because your team that was worth billions isn't going to be worth billions anymore. And that's not going to work.
If you want relegation, you need to root for like expansion to something in the range of 50-ish teams. And then, and only then, could you maybe see the NBA say, all right, we can start to do some form of relegation where, maybe the top division is the top 20 teams and the bottom division is the bottom 30 teams, and everybody's kind of trying to play their way up into that top division. But as it stands today, no, because nobody wants to be bumped down to under the current structure, bumped down to the G League. Like no one's going to do that because and the other problem is the way the collective bargaining agreements and the like are set up. Like now, do you no longer share in that? So you'd have to build this where it's you basically start from scratch and say, all right, we're starting with a new 50-ish game, maybe 40 could work, and it's 20 and 20, but everybody shares in all the profits, but 20 teams. And then you'd almost have to play that first year out to be like, all right, we're going to knock 20 teams out this very first season in there, because I don't know how else you would start unless you said, we're just going to start with the new teams or whatever. But yeah, it's it's just tough. It's not something I see coming to any American sports anytime soon.
It would be such an uphill battle to try to bring it in. It's such an uphill battle. I just can't see people being on board. James Harden is almost playing like Ben Simmons of last year. Not in great physical shape, scared as hell to shoot wide open shots. It's fascinating how much the Clippers have turned worse after the trade. Isn't it been like 3 days?
Yeah.
Something like that?
And we don't know anything yet.
Yeah.
Like we got to give it more time tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like we'll see. But I'm not going to make that. I'm not going to bank on that just yet.
Even your dog didn't like that one.
No.
But yes, I agree. It's too small of a sample size. Mr. Easley said, is there a team you think is in trouble already? Memphis. Who are your picks for early season surprise? So we went over that a little bit on the show yesterday. We talked about some early surprises. Of course, the Pacers being one of them. They've been pretty interesting. But Memphis, I think, is the team that's in trouble. And Keith, you spelled it out in terms of where they really realistically need to be when Ja comes back. They've already put themselves in quite a bit of a hole. They would have to have a very serious turnaround like right now to get to where they need to be when Ja comes back to start to make a push. Look, the Lakers started 2-10 last season. You never know, but this is a difficult start if this team wants to make the playoffs in the West.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're the team easily that you can say is in trouble. Everybody else is either bad and expected to be there, or just kind of they'll figure it out. There's I mean, we haven't even played 10 games yet, I don't think, for anybody in the league. So but Memphis is they're struggling. And then surprises, we went through a whole bunch of teams and individual players and the like yesterday, but Pacers have been very fun. Philly weathering this early season distraction stuff and playing so well is really off to a good start. So good. But not to pull the old go watch yesterday's show, but we spent a lot of time on that yesterday.
Go watch yesterday's show.
Yeah.
All right, we'll finish with this one, and then I know we got to run here. But Justin said, as a Lakers fan, I have to tell my fellow fans, relax. We're only 8 games in. Be patient. Mostly just wanted to drop in and say you two are crushing it. God bless and keep up the great work. Well, thank you very much,
Yeah, thanks
Justin.
for those
Truly,
kind words.
truly do appreciate it. And tell you what, it's the nature of fandom. We ride the roller coaster. Team wins, everything's great. Team loses, the sky is falling. It's kind of the way it goes. But I think it's also fair to say that Lakers have been pretty disappointing so far, and fans haven't been given something to really look at and say, well, they've got all these injuries, but that game they looked really good. That's what they really are. And the injuries, once they're healthy, then that'll come back. I think the injuries have been an issue, but I also think they're just not playing well. They're just not playing good basketball. They're shooting probably unsustainably poorly. I don't think they're really a 29% 3-point shooting team, but I think that will come up. But they've got a lot of things that they need to fix. The rebounding issues, all sorts of things. And I've spent a bunch of time talking about it on Lakers Nation, so I won't rehash everything here. But I understand why people are frustrated. They're not really a fun watch right now. It would be different if they were 3-5 and every game was super close and they look good and they're putting up points and they're just somehow falling short at the end. But it's been kind of a grind watching them so far this season, and that's something I think people are looking forward to turn around. So I understand the frustration with them right now, but you're right. It is just 8 games. There's a long way to go, and as we saw last season, a lot can still happen.
Yeah, I think right now too, I don't know what you can point to and say their identity is.
Yeah.
Right, because they're not playing good enough defense to say they're a defensive team, which that's really what they became last year. I feel like that's what kind of got them going was they picked it up defensively and then had enough offense to survive. We're seeing a little bit of the comeback to earth for Austin Reeves, right? There's no he is no surprise to anybody. And a lot of times when young guy gets all the pub from new contract and the Olympic or not the Olympics, the World Cup team and all that, he's getting everybody's going at him now, right? And that's a little bit of he's a smart player, he's a good player, he'll figure it out. He's I think been pressed into having to do some stuff that's not really what he is as a player as well. Probably again due to some of the injuries and the like. But it's 8 games in, 3-5. Again, you could be the Grizzlies. You could be sitting there at 1-7. I know it's only a difference of 2 games, but that probably feels like a world of difference if being in one spot to the other. So I think they'll be fine. It's just just don't put yourself in such a big hole where you have to dig out of it with an unsustainable level of effort all the way through the end of the season, because eventually you will run out of gas. So we'll Mr. Classic says no one expected Austin Reeves to struggle like this. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. It's been worse than like just normal regression would have been, but it's also an 8-game sample size, and a lot of it is. I say it all the time. 3-point shooting is not a sticky stat, even week to week. It's not a sticky stat. So is he? It comes into to me. It becomes what do you think is real? Is it real that he's a 28% shooter from 3? No. Is it real that he's like a 45% shooter from 3 in the playoffs? No. It's probably somewhere in between, and that's okay. So when people look at the Lakers, they look at Austin Reeves and they go, "Oh, he's just trash."
Yeah.
Right. And that's just this determination that this is simply what a player is. I don't think that's accurate. I think we're too far into small sample size territory. And I don't think it's reasonable to buy that he's just suddenly a terrible 3-point shooter. I think that'll come back around eventually. Will it go back to 40+%? Maybe not, but I don't expect it to be this low all season.
Yeah, I think the only thing that is, I'm gonna say, like almost like when you're flagging your sprinkler heads, like a little red flag, like that size in the yard right now for the Lakers. Little red flag is perimeter defense is a little too shaky for me. They're really missing that one guy who can kind of get out there and lock down, because D'Angelo Russell's not that guy. LeBron is possession or 2 a game. That guy at this point now, like he just doesn't do that anymore. Reeves is he's okay, but it's more if he's not good enough to be put on the other team's best perimeter scorer and creator. That's not who he is. So I don't. That's kind of where I'm like, could we get a few more minutes for Max Christie and just maybe find out? Like I don't know. I don't know that that's the answer. And
Christie
maybe
struggled too.
Yeah, he struggled too, but I feel like there's maybe something there. But
Mhm.
maybe that guy's just not on the roster yet, and they'll figure it out. I mean,
Yeah.
they left themselves a little thin with kind of true perimeter players, as it felt like they threw their moves, handled the ball handling, and then they handled the beefing up the front court like true forward size
Yeah.
guys. They don't really have like it's kind of Reeves and then a whole bunch of unproven dudes at the two, and that's a little bit of a weak spot. So but it's again, it's 8 games. We'll see if they figure that out, where
Yeah.
they go.
Yeah. The moves they made said they really believed in Christie and believed that Reddish was going to come in and be able to be something. And he's done
Yeah.
some good things defensively, but not elsewhere. So we'll
We
see
all
what they
know how I
ultimately
feel
do.
about that one.
Yes. Yes.
Hey, one last thing. Robert Williams is out
Yeah.
for the season.
Yeah. That's it.
That's just that was confirmed today. So that stinks. Like that's just just there's nothing left to say except that sucks. So
Absolutely.
it is what it is.
Well, on that happy note, we're gonna end the show here. But I do appreciate everybody for joining us here on a Friday to talk some NBA basketball. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you do subscribe to the NBA Front Office Show here on YouTube. Hit that like button as well. We appreciate all of you. Have a fantastic weekend, and we will see everybody on Monday. Till then, see ya and stay safe.